what I like to do today is to I think, reinforce this statement, which everybody knows, that doing entrepreneurship in health tech is really very challenging. So next. And the main reason why it's so tough is because, I go back one, you click backwards one. It's because I think everybody knows we have to start the journey with doctors. And also, of course, doctors are the users. We also end the journey with doctors. So I think that's where I think everything revolves around doctors, and doctors are not the easiest people to work with. So I think we definitely need evidence. So next. So at the early stage, you need to convince us, I'm a doctor myself, you need to show me evidence that your product or whatever your idea is better than the current. So that's without saying. And getting evidence is quite tough as well. You spend a lot of money, time, and so forth. Next. And after that, I think once you got the evidence, you need to approach somebody who is famous. There are other very famous urologists in today's panel. I'm not famous. So you need to convince one of them who is going to take you through the entire hurdles. There are many challenges, and the person must be able to champion your cause. Next. And finally, of course, I think a lot of new products need to be trained. So you have to go through the training part. So all these steps take a lot of time and effort. So I think these 3 E's are easy to remember for everyone who wants to go through the entire process. Next. So this is why I think I say that we are in some ways very important partners to Donia, because I think we have a lot of, I think we have spent a lot of time and effort to train ourselves with skills. And then when you come in with certain things, I think we always want to know why we should be disrupted. And that's where innovation, entrepreneurship in health tech is so tough. So next. So that's why I need to run through with you the next one. Why do I actually even bother to do it myself as a clinician who is quite comfortable in my own career? Next. So I think generally, I think the startup for clinicians is driven chiefly by the need. Next. And when we sense that there's a need for us to do certain things, we need to come up with a sort of issue which to my colleagues in the same field are worth solving. Otherwise, without this first step, it's going to be very tough, as I mentioned before, going through the entire journey, because you got to convince people with evidence, with eminence, and so forth. So all this becomes very tough if your first step is actually wrong. So you need to ask the correct question. Is this issue even worth solving? If you're not convinced yourself, and you're not confident to do it, then don't bother, because the commitment will not be there by many other people. So that's where, taking my case, I think this one I just want to illustrate to you using this Endomaster, which is an endoscopy robot, to say that I think when I first started this, I have to kind of convince myself that this is something, a robot is useful for my particular work. So I was very convinced in this thing, because I thought, I think endoscopy is only one arm. And if the Luis V, who is my engineering partner, could provide me with 2 arms, which can then go into the human bodies, then I solve a lot of things, because then I could be as good as a surgeon, which before that I could never beat them, because they got 2 arms, I have 1 arm. So that's where I felt that this is worth solving. And then the rest is about development. You got to then use your idea and translate into something which the engineer can produce. So we got the inspiration from the crab claw, which is the chili crab in Singapore. And from there, you got a version, a prototype, which you can then further develop it through what we call, I think, many years of research and so forth. Next. So that's step. Once you got the idea, and as I mentioned, the need, the idea, and then the solution, then the rest of the time, you really need to go through failures. And to me, I think failures are badges of honors. If you haven't gone through failures, you really have not done innovation. So I think and then also be prepared for rejection, because I was rejected the most. And because we started very early, and in those days, I think the Singapore ecosystem was simply not ready for innovation. Innovation was considered dark the dark side. They prefer to do all these pure sciences and so forth. So anyway, I think the days have gone. So we are very lucky now. I think the mainstream people are starting to accept innovators. Next. So once you do that, I think it's very important to quickly sort of recognize that this is something which is translatable. I think you have to do what we call proof of concept study. So you managed to finally do that and became the first group in the world to perform what we call the flexible endoscopy to remove gastric cancer. I think with that, this editorial wasn't written by me, it's by by a couple of very famous Americans. They say, well, a small case series, a giant step for endoscopy. Perhaps I think you can click onto this video clip if you could. The video
Tissue
clip here.
edge is now grass and inverted.
Okay, you can stop the video clip.
Which is the left.
Okay, I think that's the idea. Now you got two arms which can be operated as if you're doing something using both arms, and then it's inside. So I think with that, obviously, I think once we could prove to people, like I say, the evidence is there and so forth, we performed 5 cases, real humans, patients. I think then after that, success started pouring in, and then we got awarded the President's Science and Technology Award. I think with that, our confidence level improved tremendously. Next slide. That's when I think we incorporated a company, because we knew that at the time, I think being academics, it's going to be difficult to continue this journey without bringing in a different group of people. Okay, Abel will tell you, I think doing all these startups, you got to actually firstly define the job scope. And once you got a job scope defined, you know that you're not going to be the one doing the thing, because you simply are not experts. So I think the job scope then define the people, world-class people you have to bring in order to realize your solution and bring it forward. So that's where we sort of started this company and then started raising fund and so forth, getting all the partners we need. So I think that's the next. So I think we sort of have this thing and then got funded and so forth. And now it's going to Series C now. And hopefully one day we can actually reach the world. Next one. So the next one I want to briefly mention is about the next startup, which is called Endophotonics. Again, I think the birth wasn't the easiest. It was tough, even tougher than Endomaster. I incorporated this in 2013, and having done research with another engineer for many years. Again, I think if you look at the timeline, AI wasn't really that established in the mid 2000 when I first started. So this is talking about even beyond, I think, machine learning. This is deep learning, which I think Abel briefly mentioned. So at that time, we wanted to say that endoscopy is actually very subjective. It's very skill dependent. And we look at images all the time. We try to interpret the images, and then we try to kind of make a diagnosis. So that's where I kind of thought, well, is there a way where I could be as good as a pathologist and then without having gone through all this, I think, learning? That's where I think we resorted to using a laser, which can then be fired upon the tissue and then make real-time diagnosis. Not only a diagnosis, real-time on the spot. So I think with that, you are able to then bring in the artificial intelligence algorithm, and then after that, process it, and then becomes solution instead, which now I think the other companies are starting to do, but they are all based in image. This is not based in image. So I think we are quite proud that we managed to come up with this idea so many years ahead of quite a lot of people. Next one. So I think then, obviously, I think once a company is formed, we started getting awards. And next one. And recently, also this year, we managed to raise Series B funding and so forth. So this is something, again, is a case that you got to start with a very important so-called challenge statement, and then you got to then be able to solve it and define the job scope accordingly. So next one. So the last one, I think, before I get chased out of this panel, is to say that I think this is the last current startup which we just started, and this is based on a endoscopic capsule. You realize that all my kind of innovations start with endo, because we thought we just do this as a kind of endos series. So I think this one is based on capsule endoscopy. Everybody knows about capsule. You swallow a capsule, then it will take images throughout your GI tract. But currently, I think the capsule is based upon a very, I think, passive system. So what we wanted at the time is, can we turn the capsule into a treatment modality? And then the kind of idea came at the time. We wanted to solve something big. We thought obesity is worth solving, and then we came up with this magical. They call this is not done by me. It's done by this particular newspaper journal called Food Manufacturing. They call this is a magical fat pill. So you swallow the capsule, then the capsule will be inflated upon activation from outside, and then after that you feel full and you stop eating. So I think the good thing is once this idea went out, we prove it in a human volunteer. Then suddenly I saw in the social media so many of these things started appearing. And then when it started appearing with so many different, I think, languages which you don't recognize, you know that you got something which is interesting to many people in the world, because I can't even read these languages. So this is a clear validation that a lot of newspapers, social media pick it up, this idea, and thought it's interesting. So now I think we are obviously beyond this initial kind of elation phase. We are now going into really tough work of trying to again develop this idea further. So I think with that, hopefully I think I share with you, I think some of these I think challenges of being a clinician, both as a beginner and also finally I think hopefully I can convince my clinician colleagues to adopt some of these solutions eventually. So thank you very much for your attention.